This is the Art of Network Engineering podcast. In this podcast, we'll explore tools, technologies, and talented people. We aim to bring you information to expand your skill sets and toolbox and share the stories of fellow network engineers.
We've all seen the stories, heard the tales. For years now, local networks have been flooding with packets demanding internet access. Depletion of IPv4 addresses is continuing rapidly. Of course, IPv6 is the ultimate answer, but adoption is slow. We live in the age of the Internet of Things, and there are oh so many. I'm pretty sure you can even connect your toilet directly to the internet now. I mean, seriously, what the heck? Why would you do that? Luckily, all these years, there has been a service working tirelessly to keep the lights on, bridging that gap until IPv6 saves us all. And that gap bridger is me. I am that man. And this is the Art of Network Engineering. Nat Man.
Gosh.
All right, thank you, Natman. I am AJ Murray at No Blinky Blinky. Natman is Tim Bertino at Tim Bertino. Natman, how you doing?
Not too shabby. Natman is an extremely low-budget film, but it is unrated, so anything can happen.
Can we expect multiple sequels of Natman like we have other popular
Oh, I
movies
hope
that
not.
might rhyme with that? I don't know.
I hope not.
I think we need more.
I don't want to do
we
that
need more
again.
Natman. Or at least other characters that we might find with Natman.
Natman versus Ant-Man or something?
Yeah.
Just dyslexic battle from hell.
Dan made it home from Vermont. Dan, how you doing?
I'm a little bit sadder, but I made it
know.
home safely, so that's all that matters, I guess.
I know. My wife had to keep checking with me. She's like, "Oh, you're sad, aren't you?" I'm like, yeah, I miss my friend.
I miss my buddy.
We had so much fun.
We did.
We got really drunk too.
No, we didn't.
No, we really didn't. We had a lot to drink. We didn't get really
We did.
drunk.
Yes, we did. Lots of beer was consumed.
Andy, how are you?
I'm good, AJ. Not too much to report. I had some ice cream tonight.
Hey, that's a good night.
I'm mad at you, by the way.
Me?
Yeah. Because
About time.
I had gone a fairly decent amount of time without hitting the ice cream bucket, and you started talking about it a few weeks ago.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You can afford it. You look like you weigh all of 90 pounds soaking wet, so have some ice cream, Tim.
You got it, just for you, Andy.
Thanks, brother.
All right, guys. We do have a guest this evening, but before we introduce our guest, we'll get through our normal playlist here. So, Andy, can I get a goat scream for the winning? Grab your goat.
What?
Your
no,
batteries
no.
are done. The goat needs a battery.
There we go. Hey, look.
There it is.
Was that yours or mine?
I don't know.
It sounded like it was
If
in
you have
stereo.
to ask, Andy. If you have to ask.
Wait a minute. My goat's failing. Hold on.
That's a failure plaque one right there.
No.
Time for battery. We
Son of
wore
a-
it out. We wore it
It's all the
out.
wins.
Winning this week is Bill Murray. He passed his VCP 7.0. Congratulations, Bill. Eric
job.
Smith passed the Security Plus exam.
Okay.
Ooh,
Very
this is my favorite win this week.
Let's
The
hear it.
underscore EOC accepted a position as a network deployment engineer at Red River. Congratulations.
Oh, nice.
Did he know who works there?
Yeah.
Yes, he knows who works there. Thank you, Tim.
Okay. You're welcome.
Future coworker, the underscore EOC.
We need to get him on, by the way. I know a little bit about him, and he's got a great story.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, I'm sure we will.
Yep.
So he started, or when does he start?
I believe he starts mid-August. He
Okay.
accepted the position and is working through that process. So we'll expect to see him here mid-August. McManemy, if I can pronounce that right. Nicholas passed his DevNet Associate and the ECMS1. You guys, are you familiar with the ECMS?
No.
No, which
That
one's
is
that one?
Engineering Cisco Meraki Solutions.
Oh, okay.
So
Did they
it's
change
a
it?
two-parter. There's part 1 and part 2. And he's completed part 1 and moving on to part 2. But more importantly, they passed the DevNet Associate. That's a big one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nice.
Yeah, we talked through that in the happy hour last week. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
is that the? I'm not even going to try to pronounce it or say the alphabet there, but is that the CMNA like 2.0?
Sure. So the CMNA is a partner related I think it's like
Oh, okay.
partner only, like partner and
Yeah.
Cisco employee only kind of thing. And then the ECMS is the customer side. So I forget what it used to be called. There was like a Cisco, there's the CMNA, which is the partner side. And then there was the CMNO, which is the Cisco Meraki Network Operator.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
CMNA is just a course you attend for a day. There's
Yeah.
no test. or
I gotcha.
anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha.
Mike T got another Security Plus win, so congratulations, Mike T. DJ Ninja NZ, which I can only imagine stands for New Zealand, accepted their first network-focused role at an MSP, of course, in New Zealand. So congratulations, DJ
Nice.
Ninja.
Awesome.
Hard Reset, the screen name Hard Reset, got their first IT job offer. So congratulations, Hard Reset.
Yeah, nice.
Got some new Patreons. The word's getting out
let's hear
about
'em.
the Patreon. So welcome aboard, Josh, Jordan, Manny, and I got to say their last names because they're both got the same first name and the same last initial. So welcome Bill Murray and Bill Maskey, Ethan and Javier, who joined moments ago just before we started recording. So I had to slide that in there. So
Nice.
welcome,
Thank you all.
Patreons.
Yes, thank you.
Very much appreciate that. We really appreciate your support. Andy, can I get another goat scream?
I'll try.
There we go.
Hey,
Got him warmed up. now he won't stop.
Andy, quiet your goat.
Yeah.
Once you get my goat started, AJ.
Oh boy.
What kind of podcast is this?
I don't know.
Am I editing
Wasn't
this
my
one?
idea.
This is going to be a
Yeah.
fun one. I'm going to slice and dice this one.
Yep.
Okay. Very excited for our guest this evening. They are a Cisco Press Author and CCIE 7472. Everybody, please welcome Roddie to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, Roddie.
Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So, Roddie, what do you do?
It's in my bio, AJ. So
And that's the show.
I'm a technical solutions architect at Cisco Systems. Been there for 13 years.
13.
Wow. All right.
Sexy.
Yeah.
So what does the day-to-day look like of a TSA?
So I'm at the worldwide level, focused on DNA Center, Software-Defined Access, ICE. So TSA is an overlay to the SE community generally, right? So an SE would have a direct customer relationship. A TSA or technical solutions architect would be brought in as an SME for a focus, either a enterprise networks focus or a WAN focus or a data center focus. And then that's usually kind of at the area level. And then at the worldwide level, we're kind of hyper-focused on technology. So my focus is DNA Center and Software-Defined Access. So I haven't had to really think too much about WAN beyond connecting it to SDA or DNA Center or Data Center. I haven't had to do much of that. Most of the last 3 years has been spent just doing DNA Center and Software-Defined Access.
So if an SE is working with a potential client and then they need like an SD access guru,
Yep. They'll bring me
Then they
in.
would pull
They'll bring
you
me in
in
to do a POC or to do a demo or to help them in their lab or to answer, to have architecture discussions, that kind of stuff. So it's pretty.
are you the POC guy? Like you'll build that stuff?
I will if it's on site. I'll help the SE
Okay.
build it on site or on the customer side rather. We don't have POC facilities at Cisco, or I don't. And then we'll do demos, anything kind of pre-sales. We kind of usually leave. Once the architecture and migration discussion is done, I move on because we're kind of a small group within Cisco, so we don't scale that well.
So did you get in on the ground floor of SD Access?
I did. I was a TSA, an enterprise networks TSA in the federal space at Cisco when DNA Center and SD Access came out. So my focus included that kind of stuff. So as soon as SDA started, the pre-release stuff and the demos and giving those, that's when I started learning it. So yeah, I've been around since day one.
So
Okay, awesome.
speaking of you being like a TSA, and you're talking about SD Access, what else have you done?
So I've been doing networking for coming up on 30 years.
Okay.
Believe it or not. So before being a TSA, I was an SE, so I covered everything. Before that, I was in the federal space as a network engineer, network design engineer at a federal entity for a few years. Did again mostly LAN and WAN stuff. SD-WAN before it was called SD-WAN. Before that, I was with Sprint. Did a lot of MPLS, a lot of WAN stuff at Sprint as well, Cisco stuff. And then, so now networking goes back almost 30 years, but I also did Microsoft stuff and NetWare stuff at the same time as Solaris stuff. I was Solaris certified way back then as well. And then before, I did everything I could. How far are we going back, Dan?
You're doing great.
Yeah.
As far as origin stories are concerned, I did everything I could to avoid getting into IT. I got started, and I think I got my first computer in 84. And so I got started really early. I was really good at it. Everybody called. I was the kid that would help them fix their printer or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I never wanted to do it as a living. I did everything I could to avoid it. So I majored in music in college.
Nice.
I drove taxi for a couple of years.
Wait, what instrument?
I played drums.
Do you have to pick an instrument? Drums?
Drums, piano. Drums was my main one, and then I played piano, and there's a hood back there, which is, I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's,
do you have a kid at home?
I do. Yep.
What do you have?
I have a Gretsch Maple that I rarely ever play.
Nice.
Yeah. Is that going to be the next episode?
Yeah. We're going to have a jam session.
You don't meet too many drummers.
Yeah. I started playing probably around the same time I got a computer, maybe 12 or 13 years old. So I did everything.
You wanted to go into music.
What's that?
You wanted to go into music?
I did. Well, I didn't want to go into IT. And of course, I was in bands in the 80s in high school and loved doing that kind of stuff and thought.
Did you have big hair? Hair-sprayed hair?
I had big Robert Smith, The Cure hair. Yes, I did.
Nice. I'm just picturing that right now.
I still got a good head of hair, but it was pretty big. And, mousse was the thing back then. So I used a lot of mousse and finished it with hairspray. And my mom would get mad because I would use all her hairspray. So I tried everything. Got into music, drove taxi for a couple of years, sold cars, sold insurance and mutual funds, just did all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh wow, you had a diverse background there.
I did, yeah, and got married fairly young and had a kid and realized I actually needed to make some money and pay for things. So here we go. I'll start doing consulting. So I started doing consulting, IT consulting officially in 92, 93.
Okay. Based on what skills?
So back then it was just PCs. So I was just learning IPX and SPX back then. And then eventually NT351, NT4, and then into Cisco.
Were you self-taught because you didn't go to school?
I was self-taught.
Right?
No, I was completely self-taught.
You had a knack. You taught yourself.
I did, yeah. I had the MS-DOS 3.2 manual, and I just read manuals. I literally would read vendor manuals. That's all we had because we didn't have I think the first IT book I bought was in 96. It was the Unix System Administrator's Handbook.
So you could get an interview and a job based on I read the manual and I know how to answer your questions.
Yeah.
Is that how it used to work?
Yeah, I would just break stuff. I would just, I took apart the computer that my parents spent so much money on and I broke it and then figured out how to fix it. And that's really kind of how it came to be.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Cause I think back in the 90s and whatnot, the internet was just booming at that time. Right. And so I'm not,
no, late 90s it was.
Yeah. What I'm getting at is that's impressive that you were able to, teach yourself this because, nowadays, we've got a plethora of things to learn from. We have, online video courses. You can go to online, regular college courses now. Yeah. It's just insane. We've got all these manuals. We've got all these, official cert guides, all that stuff. And you guys didn't have all that back in the day, and so that's very impressive. I like hearing that.
Yet I still
Did you go to
complain, Dan.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah,
Wait.
we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have
Right,
Did
yeah.
you go to the library and use the Dewey Decimal System?
I absolutely used the Dewey Decimal System. Andy and I, man.
Now, Andy, for our listeners that don't know what that is, can you please?
We'll put a link in the show notes. So
Don't do that.
How do you transition from I'm fixing the PCs to networking?
So
how does that happen?
I started working at a computer store in 95, I think. 94, right before Windows 95 came out. And I was building PCs and fixing and assembling PCs. And then it was a service call. This company wants to buy 5 PCs. We need to figure out how to connect them together. And back then it was BNC connectors and IPX. So I learned NetWare on my own to do that. And then NT came out and I put IP and IPX on the same network with those cards, and just kind of taught myself and figured it out at the shop. And then I liked the networking piece. I opened I helped start one of the first commercial ISPs in Canada.
Okay.
And through that, I learned Unix and IP. I think I opened a TAC case in like 92, 93, and the TAC engineer taught me subnetting.
Well,
That's how I learned subnetting. Was the TAC engineer taught me how to subnet, and then that was it.
So
I'm not sure they do that anymore.
They probably don't. I looked him up the other day because I can look him up in the directory. He's long gone, but I found the email, man. He here's what a network mask is, and everything was still classable back then. And here's why you can't use this mask with this IP address. And
Is that a P1 or a P2?
I still remember the case, man. It was we're connecting a frame relay T1 to a 2500 router to get this ISP up and running in Canada.
That's pretty cool. Like, did you print that email out? Because I'd like print that out and like frame
I
it.
should. Yeah, no, I do have the email somewhere. I looked it up a couple months ago because I wanted to look up this guy just to thank him, right? Because that was it. Like I did a lot of IT stuff, and I was good at computers and fixing computers, and I was the guy that you would call. But actual IP networking and networking in general was really because of this guy. I mean, I was doing Unix stuff at the ISP.
Yeah.
Did you find networking as easy as you found working with hardware?
I did. I was they say music, folks that are good at music are also good at math. So I was always a good math guy. And so that was the easy part for me. And it was fun, right? Yeah. I just found it enjoyable to do. So I kept going. Yeah.
Okay.
So when did you go for your first Cisco cert?
That would have been 2000. So I got, I moved from Canada to the US. I had my MCSE and I had my network certifications. Got to the US, got my CCNA in late 99, early 2000.
Now, were you still doing the consulting gig during all this?
Yeah, I was with a company called Paranet. Andy might remember them. They were bought by Sprint, but they were one of the big consulting firms in the
I apologize.
the late 90s.
That was before my time, Roddie.
You did say decade, yeah. Sorry.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. And you could tell me to pound sand if it's too personal, but why did you move from Canada to the States? Was it for job opportunities or personal reasons?
Mostly job opportunities. I was tired of the cold. I was tired of the snow. I was tired of just now it's the opposite. Now I'm tired of the heat. And I would give anything if it would snow right now because I could get a good night's sleep. So back then, it was 98. The economy was booming down here, especially in Dallas, and the cost of living was really low. And companies were throwing money left, right, and center at you. They were flying you wherever for your interview. Just for an interview, they would fly you just to do just to do IT. And they paid for the move and all that kind of stuff. So I just decided to go for it. And it's just a good change, different cultures, different food down here. Nice. So I was mainly with Paranet. I was doing Cisco stuff, Solaris stuff, and Microsoft stuff, and they really encouraged certifications back then. Sprint bought them, and so I got my CCNA. I think in '90. I think it was early 2000, and then within 6 weeks, I went CCNA, CCDA, CCNP, CCDP. So I did an exam a week for like 7 or 8 weeks. Got all three of those knocked out. Yeah, it was.
Oh my god!
Just,
I don't know how I do it. My
Wait a minute. What exams?
CCNA, CCDA, CCNP, CCDP in 5 weeks.
Good grief. Did you have a wife at that point, or
I did? I had a wife and a
a life.
Oh, a life.
Oh, the wife.
No,
the wife gave him a
no.
life.
No. I mean,
It's the same thing, Daniel.
I would work. I would come home and read the book, whatever the book was for that exam.
Yeah.
And I would just go and do the exam. I don't know how I did it, to be honest.
Were they 800-page books at the time?
Yeah, they were the big, thick Cisco
dude.
guides. Yeah. I don't know how. I honestly, I'm almost 50 right now, and I don't know how I was able to do that back then. How? So I can't read a page right now without falling asleep.
Wait a second. I'm the same way.
Yeah. So obviously, then the kind of next step in the progression was the CCIE, and back then Sprint would pay for the lab.
Okay.
But you had to use your own time to study. So I went. So I was like, I think I was 7 exams in for all those Cisco exams. Then my 8th exam was the CCIE written. So
did you fail any of those 7?
Not one. I have never failed a Cisco exam in my life.
Golly.
It's hard to like you, Roddie.
Yeah. I think it's honestly. I think I'm just stubborn because I think my mindset is if I fail this, I'm not going to do it again. So I'll just go, which is really a bad attitude, especially for your listeners. Don't use that attitude. It's okay. I have an eidetic memory, so I'm able to retain stuff really easily. So,
what does eidetic mean?
It's like a photographic memory, but it's more associative than literal.
How do we get one of those?
It's a curse. It's a curse. Trust me, it's a curse. Because I can still tell AJ how bad I felt when he tried to get me to do the podcast a few months ago and then completely forgot about me, because I still remember those feelings because I have an eidetic memory.
Ouch.
Hey,
so it's a curse. It's a blessing and a curse. But
do you remember everything that's ever happened to you?
I can recall pretty much everything. Yeah, and I might need a reminder here and there, but as soon as I get the reminder, it just pops into my head.
What's her face from Taxi? Remember that woman? I forget her name. The pretty woman from Taxi. What, the actress?
Eileen?
I think she has whatever. She remembers everything that's ever happened to her. She's been on all these shows, and like you can ask her anything. She knows the day, the date, the weather. Like
it
sounds awful.
Yeah,
it's good for exams though.
It's good for exams, and it's good for work. It really is good for work, because I can have a conversation with a customer, and 6 months later they call me and say, "Remember this?" and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's right," and then I can talk to them.
So you don't have to take notes, probably. Right?
I can't take notes. If I take notes, I actually forget. I actually
because you're not paying attention, right?
Because I'm not paying attention. It's not registering.
Okay.
Yeah, the part of my brain that remembers is focused on figuring out how to use a pen. So
great. So Roddie's never going to forget about Natman.
Yeah, that picture's stuck.
I won't forget about Natman or all the jokes he made about Andy before he joined. I won't.
I'm used to it. I'm a beaten man, Roddie. So CCIE, you were studying on your own. Sprint was going to pay for it.
Sprint was going to pay for it, so I went and did the written, passed that the first time. And
so what was the written like? Because if you were to compare that to today, because
terrible.
Today, if you take the CCNP, you're also taking the CCIE written.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Then,
okay.
There was probably multiple exams to do the CCNP, and then you still had to do the CCIE written, and then you still had to do the CCIE lab.
Correct. Yeah. So the CCNA was the one exam, DA was one exam, NP was 4 more, and then the DP was 1 in addition to CCNP.
Yeah.
And as you got higher, the certs were newer, right? CCNA had been around for a few years by then, so the exams were pretty good and pretty solid. But as you got further up the chain of certifications, those exams got a lot sloppier, because not as many people were doing them or proofing them or giving feedback on them.
Okay.
So by the time you got to the IE, so my number is 74, 72, so there were 6,000 by then, right?
Right. And for anybody listening, that's
rough.
because number 1 was like 1,024, not 1.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah. So, so by the time I got to that exam, it was 100-question multiple choice, just like all the rest, but it was very rough, very sloppy. I mean, but by then I was used to it, because I had done the DP was pretty rough as well. And then got the CCIE written out of the way, and I kind of made and for those that are going to go for the CCIE, I know it's different now than it was when I did it back then, but I wouldn't let myself use lab equipment until I passed the written exam, because the written exams, the NP, the DP were all theory. You could learn on equipment, and you can type router OSPF 16 and configure an OSPF network, but that's not going to help you in a multiple choice question. It's just not. You need to know the timers. You need to know the defaults. You need to know this command versus this command as written, but not as on a router. But especially, and I think what I've seen happen with people I've mentored in the past is they'll learn how to do it on the device and think they're going to ace the exam, but the exam is wrong because the old saying is that there's the right answer, the wrong answer, and then the Cisco answer. So the Cisco answer on the exam doesn't necessarily have to be the one that matches what you did on your router or your switch. It's the one that you read in the book. The books are written for a reason. The blueprints are written for a reason. So I kind of banned myself from touching network gear unwork related until I got the CCIE written out of the way. And then once that was out of the way, I went on eBay and bought one router at a time and built my own lab at home. And spent 6 months, used all my vacation time in that 6 months, and passed the exam on May 23rd, 2001.
Wow. On your first shot.
My first shot. It was a 2-day exam.
2 days.
2 day, and it had IP, IPX, AppleTalk, NetBUI, DLSW, ATM lane. It had all the non-IP protocols. One day was IP, the other day was the non-IP protocols. So it was a 2-day exam. You didn't find out if you made it to the second day until the next morning. So you do your first day. Oh, it's stressful.
That's brutal.
Am I allowed to cuss on this podcast? I cuss a lot.
It's a podcast.
So I went, I did the first day, and you sit down, you do the exam, and it's, you're stressed. Everybody's talking about CCIE is so difficult. You're never going to pass the first time. And, there's me, like, I'm not going to do this again if I don't pass. So I'm just going to pass. So I got through the first day, stressed out, and you go back to the hotel. I did it in San Jose. I woke up at 3 a.m, and in my head was, shit, I forgot to send communities. Like that was and for those listening, send communities is the BGP command. You need to actually pass the communities on to the neighbors. So I woke up remembering that I forgot to type send communities because I had practiced every scenario leading up to the exam, and I knew what to type. And so you get into the lab the next day, to the lab room the next day, and if there's a booklet on your desk, you sit and you start day 2. And if there's not, you wait for the proctor to call you up so they can review what goes wrong. Because everything was done in person back then, right? And the lab equipment, you had a rack beside your table, and you had to cable it. Cabling gave you points, the way you cabled your equipment, because they would, for troubleshooting, they would bend the pins, so you had to straighten the pins out to figure things out.
Oh, wow.
So you got points for the way you cabled your network. You got points for a network diagram. You had a big sheet of construction paper on your desk that you had to color in with pencils to do your routing protocols and your AS numbers and where you're redistributing, mark where your redistribution points were. It was a grind.
Was that the first version of Vizio right there?
Yeah, that was
the Crayola 64 pack. Is that what they got you?
Caveman Vizio, man.
Yeah.
They give you five pencil crayons and a sheet of construction paper.
Nice.
So,
and pardon my ignorance here, Roddie, but were there concentrations for the CCIE back then, or was it just route switch that there was one IE?
There were 3. There was the CCIE Blue, which was based on the mainframe DLSW IBM stuff. Okay. Right?
You're saying trigger words for me right now.
Which one? IBM or
DLSW?
Yeah, but when I was working in federal, DLSW was my thing. So,
okay. I know who to contact.
CCIE
now.
Blue. There was CCIE. I think there was a security one. No, there wasn't a security one. There was a WAN SP one. So CCIE SP, CCIE Blue, and CCIE Route Switch. I think those were the 3. And then later came the voice and the security.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and the SP one was all MPLS, and it was all Stratacom ATM stuff.
And did you say that was in 2001, right?
2001, I got my CCIE. I just hit my 20-year anniversary just a couple of months ago.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Did you get your plaque and all that stuff?
Yeah. Long story. No, not yet. I'm still working on it.
Okay.
I have my original plaque. I have my 10-year plaque, but they haven't sent me my 20-year plaque.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So before the IE, you mentioned doing the CCNP or the CCDP. Did you just want to get into design, or was it just something to do?
It was just something to do. You back then you only needed the CCNA to be able to write the CCIE written.
Okay.
But it had been told. I talked to a couple of CCIEs that were at Sprint at the time, and they said get all of the certifications on your way up, even if you think you're not going to use it or it's not something you want to do. It's the DP was one extra exam on top of the NP, or 2 extra exams because I had to do the
just
DA,
a week, right?
Just get
no big deal.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but because back then
For
it was
me,
just,
yes, you are.
Yeah, it was just product knowledge, right? It was 1600 router. What model this router has this kind of interface? It was that kind of stuff.
Okay.
At the time, though, I was in pre-sales with Sprint Paranet. They were called back then, and so that stuff helped.
Mm-hmm.
So it did help me get into. I didn't really have an idea of what exactly I wanted to do in networking. We just did. I was a consulting engineer back then, so that's what we did. I sold network stuff and I implemented network stuff. Kind of everything counted, right?
Gotcha. So you're saying while you were at Sprint, you were actually consulting doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha. So,
yeah, I was I can't remember my exact title, but yeah, my title at Sprint, I was a consultant, a network consultant, network engineering consultant. Yeah, I didn't actually work for Sprint proper running their network. I was a pre-sales consultant. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like, because we're in 2001 right now, right? That's where we're at, and on this timeline. And so you were in consulting from 92, 93-ish all the way up to 2001?
Pretty much,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's interesting. I don't think we've heard that yet. Someone starting their first gig as consulting. So
is that the same as a contractor, a consultant?
Yeah, in a way. We weren't a body shop, so it wasn't like you would get somebody in for 6 months just to be a network engineer. It was more pre-sales stuff. I did a lot of pre-sales during that time. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which, it's good and bad, I guess. I mean, that's what I'm doing again now. So it kind of came around for full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like SE is a pre-sales position or not
it is.
really?
SE is a pre-sales. At Cisco, SE is a pre-sales position. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you kind of went did you go from consulting to SE, like formally?
No. So I went from consulting, and I got onto a project at a federal entity, and I got home from the project, and the guy there, he just actually recently passed away. He called me up and said, "Hey, we really like the work you did here. Do you want to come be our lead network design engineer?"
Oh, okay.
So that was it. So I went there. I was there for 6 years, and then so I was.
You were CCIE by then, right?
I was CCIE by then. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the CCIE story ended. So I passed, got the number, and went back to doing whatever I was doing, and ended up as a network design engineer, network design engineer, I think was my formal title for this federal entity for 6 years.
Did the CCIE change your life? Did you get better jobs, more money?
Yeah, back then, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Back then, absolutely. I mean, Sprint had the deal if I passed, they would pay for everything, and then if I passed, I would get this bonus or this pay increase. At the time when when consulting gigs would come up, customers were asking for CCIEs. So it opened up a lot of consulting jobs within Sprint or on behalf of Sprint while I was there. Right. So there were, CCIE needed to do this. That I qualified for that once I got my CCIE. Yeah, it was almost immediate. It was like the day after I got back, I started getting, "Hey, do you want to go do this gig somewhere else, or do you want to go do this gig?" So yeah, it absolutely helped. Yeah,
it was worthwhile. Mm-hmm. And you did it in less than a year, right?
I did it in 6 months. Yeah.
So why do you only have one? It's so easy.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I only like IP. I don't like IPv6.
Let's speed up on V6. Let's do it. Come on.
No, I was never a security guy. I was never a real voice focused person. I probably could have done the service provider one because I did do a lot of MPLS while I was at Sprint.
Yeah.
And the blue one may have been handy, but the blue one had retired, I think, by about 2004, 2005. Anyway.
Yeah. So how long were you there at Sprint then? Because we were at 2001. That's when you passed your IE. So how long were you still at Sprint for then?
I was at Sprint for 3 years, from 3 and a bit, 98 to 2001.
Okay, so after you got your IE,
98 to 2002. Sorry,
2002.
Got your
okay.
IE and bounced.
Got my IE, stayed my mandatory one. Well, so funny story. So the other agreement was, they would move me down from Canada, and they would sponsor me for all the stuff, and I had to stay a year after my CCIE and a year after the sponsorship was done. Well, they decided to get out of the consulting business, and they were going to start laying folks off that were in my division, but I wasn't going to be one of them. So I went to this customer called me and said, "Hey, we want you over here." This was in 2002. "We want you at this federal entity. We love the job you did. What do you say?" So I called my boss at Sprint and say, "Hey, can you lay me off?"
that is a funny story. I don't think we've heard that either.
"What are you talking about?" I said, "Yeah, I got lots of stories." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Yeah, it'll save you having to lay off so-and-so. I've got a job lined up. They're going to close the division eventually anyway. I got to find something else within Sprint or find something else. It's done." So it did. I got my severance. I got all my stuff covered and bounced to the next job a week later. So that was 2002. I was at the federal entity for 6 years after that.
For 6 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And were you did you say your title was some sort of a design?
Network design engineer.
Okay, gotcha.
But I did some operations as well, implementations. But overall, I was responsible for. I can't tell you who it is, but it was.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
A very large, important national network, and it covers all areas of the U.S. And so I was kind of at the top of the food chain at that point. So I was in charge of the LAN designs, the WAN designs, connecting all the sites together, making sure everything talked to the mainframes with DLSW. So that's where my DLSW stuff came in.
Gotcha.
And then eventually internet connectivity and borders and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Did they let you see the aliens?
They did not. No. Because remember, I am Canadian, so I was technically an alien. So, yeah.
He was a walking one.
Yeah, it's not a secret place, but it's just not one that I talk about because it has place.
So in your 6 years there, did you gain a lot of experience in that 6 years, or like so what I'm getting to is did you ever feel like you were starting to there's a term going around our Discord thanks to River and Discord rust out, right? Like do you feel like you were not being challenged at this job, or did you do a lot of growing in this job? What
I did a lot of growing probably for the first 4 years.
Okay.
Until I got the network to a point where it was modern and stable. So we converted from X25 links to frame relay. That was project one, right? So that was like get through that kind of stuff, and then we started taking out mainframes in places and replacing them with servers. Okay. Right. And then virtualization started to come in. So we had to get rid of the Solaris servers and bring in Linux servers so that they could run virtualization. And then the Windows stuff started coming in. So getting that stuff connected to the network, getting, IPs to move between data centers, this was all new, right? So once I got to that point, I think I kind of peaked from a technical perspective, at least for what, not that I knew everything, but for what my employer needed. Mm-hmm. I got it done. I got it all done. And then my last thing was getting the WAN stuff off of frame relay, because I'd put the frame relay in initially. And then a few years later, we're yanking out the frame relay and putting MPLS circuits in. So getting GRE and IPsec tunnels working over that, using internet as a backup, getting everything connected virtually over top, but using overlays.
That
was the best. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you also hit on, so you said something that I don't know if you want to say triggered me or not, but so I've been at my job for about 9 years, like last month. And you said that you got the network to where you were wanting it, right? Mm-hmm. And you said in about 4 years. Like, how does that feel? Because I haven't gotten mine to where I want it yet. So it's like, did you get over that mountain? You were just like, finally, it's the way I wanted it designed.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. I mean, I've been fortunate. I'll tell this to anybody that asks. I've been really lucky. I've had some really solid managers that trusted me and that knew what I was good at, and knew that if I wasn't good at something, I would say I wasn't good at it, or I wouldn't pretend or BS them. Like, something that you don't want to do in this industry is tell people you know something that you don't know, because it shows. So my managers, I've been really lucky with managers throughout my career, honestly, like from day one. And he trusted me, and he would come to me and say, "This customer wants this," or, our internal customers, "This application has this requirement. Can we figure out how to get this done?" I would say, "This is how it's done." They would come back and say, "Well, I met so-and-so on an airplane, and he said not to do this." And I would say, don't listen to that crap. My boss, my boss would go back to them and say, no, we're not going to do it that way. So I didn't get a lot of pushback.
Okay.
Not that I was always right, because I was still growing and still learning, but I was given a lot of flexibility to do things the right way because I kind of had a methodology. I knew the concepts behind HA and availability and redundancy and all that kind of stuff. I was very methodical in my approach, configuring a network or designing a network. So I was given a lot of freedom and flexibility. Not everybody has that. I can appreciate that. So, and it can be tough, but yeah, it felt good. It freed me up once I was done, it freed me up for some of the silly things that customers would ask for. And that's kind of where it started wearing thin a little bit. It was like, you know what, maybe I need to get back into consulting. But, the difference between, for me at least, because I started off consulting and then I went into an actual network position where I owned the network, I got an appreciation for outages, what those cost in terms of money and reputation, right? I got an appreciation for being on call all the time. I got an appreciation for what that takes and being careful when you're configuring something and planning something properly before you configure it so you don't cause an outage. And this is something that helped me on my CCIE, checking your work after you do it. No matter how good you are and how smart and how many times you've done it, everybody makes mistakes. And if you know those verification commands or you know what to test and what to look for when you're done, you're going to save yourself so much time down the road. Especially if you don't answer your phone and somebody else has to troubleshoot it. Right?
Yeah.
So we've been there.
Solid advice there.
Yeah.
Very, very.
So you left there. You climbed that mountain, you left there, and you went to Cisco, right?
Yeah, my ultimate goal, once I started getting my CCNA and stuff, was to work at Cisco. It was that was just where I wanted to be. And honestly, it was that TAC engineer that inspired me, man. I just like, all right, you know what? I want to work there. And so 2008, so 15 years later, 15 years after I had that encounter, the interaction with the TAC engineer, I was at Cisco. 2008, I joined Cisco, and I've been here ever since.
Nice.
What was that first job?
Cisco?
Yes, it was hard, only because they have a pretty involved interview process.
Right.
My first job was as a network consulting engineer, covering large financial accounts at Cisco.
Gotcha.
And it was that's more
pre-sales?
That was post-sales. So I did post-sales
post-sales.
for 5 years at Cisco. And still consulting, but post-sales consulting. So I would help them when they would add to their network. But I was still kind of having the same discussions, the architecture discussions, the design discussions that I was having when I was doing pre-sales. The only difference was I didn't have a number. And I would also be the one that they would call if something went wrong.
So this might be a dumb question. I call TAC when something goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So what is post-sales exactly? How do you differ from support?
So if you have if you're a large customer and you've got a global network that needs so TAC is great, but TAC doesn't necessarily know your network, and the time it takes to open a case, tell them your problem, figure out the solution to the problem, they don't have time to remember or to learn your network. Right. So advanced services exists for customers that want to buy a block of hours.
Well, you're a dedicated architect to certain clients, right?
Yeah,
You're
dedicated to certain clients, so you have familiarity with their staff, with their processes. I almost said processes for the Canadian people. Their staff, their processes, their network. You're engaged with them throughout your contract, not your contract, but their contract with Cisco. You can be a dedicated resource. You can cover 3 or 4 accounts. It's kind of like an SE. Right? Yeah. SEs would generally know their accounts. So NCEs, or as they were called back then, I don't know what they're called something else now, but network consulting engineers knew their accounts. And so they would still call TAC. Right? So if they called me and said, hey, we're having this issue, I would say, open a TAC case. I'll have a look at it in the morning. But if they needed help moving the case along or getting bug scrubs done or researching code, or if TAC tells them to do something, they would run it by me. That's the kind of stuff. We weren't TAC, and we were very careful to position ourselves not being TAC, because I don't have a lab where I can test every scenario the way TAC does. So,
so if you pay enough, you get one of you.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. You get one of me or 5 of me, or yeah.
In my work as a partner, doing deployments and stuff, I've worked with advanced services, and talk about sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had fun because I was doing pure networking, but what I found when I was in advanced services, I did learn, but I only learned what my customer had.
Yeah.
I had no opportunity to learn I didn't know that Cisco made servers until I got out of advanced services because my customer didn't use UCS.
Yeah.
I knew what they bought, and because I would only see it when it would show up and I'd have to go help them install it or put it in. But it was the SEs and the TSAs that were ahead of the game and that knew what the Cisco product. So I didn't know a product or an OS until the customer needed it. I didn't have time to go learn. I didn't get to go see the announcements and all that kind of stuff. So in that way, I feel like I lost a couple of years. I mean, it wasn't a waste. I did get better at networking, and I got really, really good at Nexus 7000 and Catalyst 6500s, but I didn't know some of the other stuff that Cisco was doing.
So you said when you were just starting out into networking that you wanted to work at Cisco.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have an ultimate goal of what you wanted your role to be, or you just wanted to get in the door and see what happened?
I just wanted to get in the door and see what happened. I would have gone to TAC. I would have gone to AS. I would have gone to BNSE. I would have gone into anything.
Okay.
I just wanted to be at Cisco. Yeah.
So how did you pick your position? Like, was it the first that came up, or you're like, well, I've been a consultant before, I'll do that for Cisco?
Yeah, it was the first. It was the first that came up. They offered me a
Okay.
job and I took it. Yeah.
Is the culture as good as I hear?
Yeah, it is. That's to answer Tim's question. I know AJ had a question. It was an important question. I don't want to forget it. But everything you've heard about Cisco, I mean, of course, it depends on your manager and your team, but it's a really good place to work. I mean, they don't have the startup mentality that a lot of startups still have and a lot of companies still have. Like you don't get the free sodas in the break rooms anymore. But they are very good at empowering their employees and trusting their employees. We don't, one of the things that drove me nuts about being in federal when I worked at the federal entity was our laptops were so locked down to a point of being almost useless. So we had to, so this story. So, we had.
I can't tell you where I work, but you're preaching to the choir.
It actually got as bad as we had to carry 2 laptops. I could have a laptop that I could access my network devices with, and I could have a laptop that I could do my emails with.
I
have
2 laptops.
And it was just very, so you know what I'm talking about, right? So at Cisco, it's like one of the first things I get this packet with my laptop and a cover sheet saying, okay, it's got Windows, or whatever we were up to back then, XP or something on it. If you want to install your own AS or OS, you're on your own, but go for it. Here's how you access the network.
You actually have admin privileges on your work laptop.
I still do. Even in 2021, I do. I mean, we have, they'll make sure my screensaver's set to 10 minutes and that I have a password that changes every 6 months. But at the federal place, we had to change our stupid password every month. And we didn't have single sign-on, so I was changing 20 passwords every month. Oh. And they had different password requirements. I'm trashing my old employer. I really shouldn't do that. They had different password requirements. Yeah. And then they would lock the laptop down and lock. You can't install Secure CRT because we don't have this. And it's like, I have a license. No, you can't install it. You don't have admin rights. So I have to open a ticket to get them to install a piece of software for me that I need to do my job, right? And it was just so we can laugh about it and complain about it, but it actually was stressful because those laptops were so bad. They would take like 10 minutes to boot up, right? And I'm sitting there, my pager's going off, and there's an outage in Philadelphia. Some guy named Andy did something wrong, and I got and I'm waiting for
very plausible.
I'm waiting for my laptop to boot up, and because it's sitting there doing the decrypt process that some goofball engineer had put on there, right? So anyway, they're very empowering, they're very trusting. So even today, we get control over what we do, but it always, of course, depends on your manager. But it's a fun place to work. There's the cool part. And this is why I don't know that I'll ever leave, is there's always someone smarter than you. Mm-hmm. And that's the way you learn, right? And honestly, to a person at Cisco, I've never once gone to somebody for help and had them say, I'm too busy, I can't help you, go ask somebody else. And I've been here for 13 years. I've never once come across that mentality. Every TSA or SE or AS, NCE or AM is always willing to help you on your customer, whether they get paid on it or not, right? I could go to a TAC guy and not have to open a TAC case to get a question answered. I could go, they don't sit there and say, oh, open a TAC case and I'll answer your question for you. I just hit them up on our chat program and they'll answer it, right? So, it's a great place to work, honestly. I mean, like I said, they don't pay startup money. It's a big company. We got 60,000 employees, but I like it here. I do like it here.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
AJ,
do you want to? Yeah, I know you got.
Yeah, you had a question.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. I was just gonna, kind of prompt you. How did you get from that post sales into pre sales?
So would that be the systems engineer job?
That was my SE job. Yeah. So funny. This is another funny story. So I was an NCE for 5 years, covering a large financial account, and the SE that covered the place I used to work, the federal entity, was moving to another account. So my ex-boss at this federal entity asked Cisco, can we move Roddie over to be our SE?
But nobody asked Roddie if that's what he wanted.
Nobody asked Roddie. So they had this conversation. That's a good point, Tim. So they had this conversation. I had no idea. I hadn't talked to any of these folks for 5 years. And I get a call from the account manager, and he says, hey, I was just talking to so-and-so at the customer. And I was like, oh, how's he doing? He's like, he's good, but their SE is leaving and they want you to be their SE. So full circle again, I end up moving from advanced services to the sales organization in federal to be the SE for my old employer.
Nice.
So I had built that network, so I knew the network.
Yeah.
I knew the funkiness that government places, the federal institutions do. I knew the processes. I knew the politics. I knew the staff. I knew all the people there. So that was a cool, again, I've been so lucky. I didn't have to learn that stuff as well as learn how to be an SE.
I got you.
Mm-hmm. Right. I got to learn how to be an SE in an environment that I was 100% familiar with.
That's pretty neat.
I didn't have to introduce myself to anybody. I didn't have to go and say, oh, here's how I do things. They knew how I did things. They knew how to talk to me and how to get.
They knew what to expect, basically.
Yeah. So it's a good, again, very, very, very lucky. I mean, I've been really lucky in my career for those kinds of opportunities. So I was the SE on that account for 3 years. And then
what does an SE do?
What does an SE do? So
I'm not trying to be smart.
No, that's a good question.
It seems like a really great gig. We've talked to a couple SEs, and I've never talked to a Cisco SE. But you're a very technical guy. You built the network. What does that SE role look like for you? Like, what do you have to learn and do differently that you were doing in your engineering job?
Yeah, it's a different. So Cisco now calls their SEs, they call them SAs, and I have to correct myself sometimes. So now it's system architects instead of systems engineer. So an SE is an account team at Cisco is made up of an account manager and an SA. So the account manager does the numbers, salesy type stuff, and the SA does the technical sales type stuff. So the SA is responsible for recommending a platform to fit a requirement, or recommending a solution to fit a requirement. Learning the customer network, learning what they need, anticipating what they might need in the future. Oh, you've got a bunch of these routers that are going to be end of sale in a year. Let's start planning to migrate away. Here's the new platform. SA will go on and do tech talks to tell them about new platforms and new software features. I would say that the SE position or SA position at Cisco is the harder position at Cisco. And that's mostly because you are responsible for all things Cisco.
I was going to ask you, do you only have a narrow set of products or you have to know it all?
No, an SA is a generalist. So you have to know routers, switches, data center, enterprise, security, collaboration, storage, servers. What else do we do? Whatever, cloud stuff, all the stuff that we do. An SA has, you can't know everything about everything, unfortunately. But what makes it hard is you have to know at least a little bit about everything, so you can at least have the first conversation and then know who to call to bring in. So then you would bring in a TSA, right? So a lot of SAs have a collab background, so their focus is collab. So they're really strong collab, but they're not so strong on routing and switching. So they'll bring a TSA in sooner than a regular SA would, right? But that's what makes the job hard, is you have to keep on top of all of those solutions and technologies and know what Cisco is bringing out, because you're responsible for making sure those solutions get in front of customers. Right?
So how did you personally gauge how deep you had to go in any given discipline?
I don't know that I thought about it too much, Tim. I at my core, I was a route switch guy. So that was the no-brainer for me. I mean, so when we would come out with the Nexus stuff, I would learn a little. I wasn't a data. I mean, when I was working at the federal entity, we didn't have Nexus, right? So Cat 6500 was the switch at the data center and the switch at the campus. There was no distinction between data center technologies. So by the time I became an SA, the data center was its own world and had its own product line. So I guess I wanted to, just using data center as an example, I wanted to get as good at data center as I was at campus and branch technologies.
Okay.
Gotcha.
But I didn't want to get into being really good at firewalls and really good at telepresence or really good at storage, because it was just, I didn't have an interest in it. That was the truth. Yeah.
I do want to say I appreciate your pun. You said that at your core, you're a route switch guy.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
That was intentional. Yeah. It's absolutely not intentional. Thank you, Tim, for pointing out my pun.
So we spent a lot of time on your story and how you got to where you were, which is amazing. Just before we run out of time, I have no idea what SD Access or DNA Center are. So I don't know when we want to pivot to that, but if you could just do like a high level, because they're your areas, right?
They
like
are, yeah.
That's the book you wrote. And so can you teach a dummy, like, what is this stuff really quick? And like,
well, right before you
get
get into that though, but why SD Access? Because there's a certain book, that, like, how did you get into that,
See, I didn't, for some reason I thought we just finished the intro. Is this the whole podcast? Because I've caught myself like, Roddie, you're talking way too much about yourself. But I guess
no. Well, you're an interesting cat who's done a lot, and definitely. I'm really learning a lot from this. So like that's now we're at the part for me. We're like, well, what is this stuff that he's an expert at? And
I thought I was just supposed to introduce myself. I didn't realize that the podcast would actually be my story, which is kind of cool. I just okay. So so Dan wants to know why I got into SDA or why a customer should get into SDA.
So there's a book out there.
There is a book out there.
Yeah. I'm trying to get to your book.
I wrote a book.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey. All right. Well, yeah. So Andy, I'll come back to your question after I talk about my book that I really don't publicize a whole lot. I don't know why. I'm just not comfortable doing it. But I guess so. Let me fast forward a little bit. So I was an SA for 3 years, and then I was a TSA, still in federal, covering just enterprise technology, so LAN and WAN. And then I had this opportunity come up about 3.5 years ago, focused on DNA Center and SDA. So about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, a friend of mine had written a couple books for Cisco Press. We were just kind of talking back and forth. And I said, one of my kind of bucket list items was to write a Cisco Press book, because that's what I got started reading when I started doing my certifications. So, and he said, yeah. Said when I talk to the publishing house once in a while, if there's a topic that comes up that I think you'd be good at, we'll do it. So a couple months later, he gives me a call. And he said, they want an SDA book. Are you in? I said, sure, let's do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you have a writing background?
No. I mean, are we counting blogs and trolling people on Twitter?
Those IPv6 guys, man. How long have you been trolling them?
I could write a book on trolling people on Twitter. No, I'd never written anything beyond. I mean, I'd written white papers, I'd written kind of architecture documents and kind of stuff like that, but I'd never written anything like a book. And I do want to talk about the book experience a little bit, because it's people. A lot of people ask me, and so he said, "Yeah, let's write a book on SDA." So I was like, "Okay, it's been on my list." Well, I always wanted to have my name on a Cisco Press book, because I knew a lot of authors, and they were always really sharp and always helpful. I was like, I want to be one of those people. So I'll never do it again. I just
Wait, that's the entire experience.
That's the
I did it, and I'll
experience.
never do it again.
I'll tell you, man, it's a mind. It is a different experience, man. I can write an email. I can write to y'all. I can go back and forth with AJ. I could write a blog post about food and networking and talk about it. But I'm going to write the way I speak.
Mm-hmm.
When you're writing a book, first of all, you have deadlines, right? If I'm writing a blog post, I have like 15 posts and drafts right now. Right? So, that have been there for like 2.5 years. I don't have deadlines, right? So, I mean, I have posts on like IPv6. So, like, I'll never get to them, right? Because IPv6 is never going to be a thing. So, you could edit that one out too. Adrian.
Oh no, we're leaving every bit.
So
we got that. We're good.
So you get this. Here's your milestones, right? You want to get 1/5 of the way through by this date, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, etc. And again, I've kind of got in my head what I want to talk about, but I sat down to do this damn book, and I started writing it like a lab guide. And I thought, this isn't going to fill a book. This is like 15 pages at best, right? And so I called my buddy who co-authored it, Jason Gooley, and I said, I'm writing this and it just doesn't feel right. I'm writing a lab guide and I know we don't want a lab guide. So he kind of gave me some ideas because he'd written a couple of books before, and I started doing it, but I just kept running out of words. And you hear authors, technical and non-technical, talk about sitting in front of a blank Word document, not knowing what to type. I was like that every damn day. I mean, I know my shit. I know SDA at this point. I know how to talk about SDA. I know how to sell SDA. I know how to help people with SDA. But how do you write about it in a book? So I started, and I went into, here's the history of automation. I think, okay, I'll start historical, and maybe that'll kind of give me some ideas. And so I did a little bit of that and talked about Ansible and all that kind of stuff. So I sent some drafts to the publisher, and it was marked to hell. So you can't use you can't use we, you can't use you can't use. It has to be impersonal.
How many cuss words did they have to cut out too?
Yeah.
Just curious.
So the impersonal, the impersonal, way of writing is intentional.
It is. Yeah, it is. Like, so, again, I would, if I write on my blog post right now, I would say, next thing you're going to do is do this, and then we're going to see what happens, right? You can't write something like that in an official book.
Be more engaging.
And that's not, well, you think, I don't know why, right? I don't get it, but that's the rule. And it's right. Just, I'm not saying people shouldn't do it. There are some fantastic Cisco Press authors out there, and I've learned a lot from those books.
I'm just beating up on the OCGs just because it's in fashion. That's
yeah, but it just wasn't for me. Like I couldn't write in my natural language in the way I speak.
Okay.
And maybe I'm weird, right? Because of the way my brain works, communicating that stuff has to be communicated in my style. I'm sitting there and you tell me to write this, but write it in this way. I really struggled. And it took me, I missed deadline after that. I felt so bad for Jason, man. He was getting crap from the publisher because I was missing deadlines. And we got it done. I had 2 co-authors, and we got the book done, and it's been out, I think, since August. So it's been out for almost a year. AJ's got a couple of copies there, I believe.
I do.
He's going to probably steal one and do something with the others. So the book is about Cisco Software-Defined Access. And so to get to your question, Andy, you want to hold it up there?
Yeah, there it is.
I say listeners, do people actually get to watch these videos?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We'll see it.
Yeah.
Put them on
Absolutely.
YouTube.
Yep.
Oh, what? You did your hair? You look great. What's wrong?
Yeah,
it looks good.
That's pretty good. But you're blue for some reason, Mr. Smurf.
Oh, come on, man.
Papa Smurf.
Yeah, Papa Smurf.
There we go.
Papa Smurf. Found his new nickname.
Wait. How does it feel to hold that book, like when it's done and you suffered through it, and like now you're on a Cisco Press book? I mean, that's got to be a high watermark, right? Like,
yeah. I'll never do it again.
Right, but
it felt good. No, that's a good question, Andy.
That's amazing.
It really is. That's a great question. And I've had people ask me this. It feels great. I have my name on a Cisco Press book. I have an author page on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you Google my name now with software-defined access or Cisco, now you're getting hits for my book, not shitty blog posts that I wrote in 2006 or tweets where I'm trolling IPv6 people. You're actually getting a legitimate author page on Google and an author page on Amazon. So that's pretty cool. That is really cool. Yeah, it was. I think I was so anxious to get it done because it took a lot out of me. It was so stressful because of the whole language thing and being able to talk. I don't know that I enjoyed it as much as I should have. I wish I had. Because it's a big deal. It is a big deal, and it kind of opens up things. People can introduce me as an author. I don't consider myself an author. I wrote some pages for a book, but yeah, it is. I can sit there and say, look, I probably read my first Cisco Press book in 98, 99, and here we are, 23 years later, and I have my name on one now. Yeah,
I'd have them all over my house. I'd be giving them away to people. I'm like, look what I did.
That's
man.
what I did.
Check this out.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. And it came out kind of during the pandemic, so I wasn't able to. We didn't have a book signing at Cisco Live. That was called off, right? We were supposed to have a book signing at Cisco Live US and at Cisco Live Europe, but those got called off.
Well, next year we can do that.
So 2022 in Vegas, I'll be able to get your book signed by you. Is that what you're telling me?
If they're going to do one, regardless of whether or not there's a book signing, Andy, I'll go and I'll sign the book for you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Andy can finally figure out what SD access is.
Have a conversation, breakout session.
Yeah. There you go. Meet the engineer. Yeah.
So you talked about timelines. Were you getting to write this as part of your TSA job, or was this all on your own time?
It's all on my own time.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it just pride, like saying that you got to be on a book, or like does Cisco say, "Hey, we're going to give you a bonus because you're on a book"?
No,
or like
there's
you get 10% of sales.
Sounds like a separate project.
It's a separate. It's writing for Cisco Press has nothing to do with working at Cisco. I don't.
So it's you and the publisher, and
me
you
and the publisher. Yeah. My boss knows because I told him that I was writing it. But other than that, there's absolutely no tie-in. I get paid from the publisher. And you don't. Again, you don't. I didn't do it for the money.
Right.
You don't.
Right.
There's writing books to make money is. Don't do it because you don't make anything out of it. But I did it. I did it because I love the technology, right? I didn't do it. Yeah. It wasn't an ego thing. There was some pride there. I did want to have my name on a cool Cisco Press book, but that was just more of it because it's cool, not because I want my name out there. I plan on a different career, man. I'm 50 years old, so I'm at where I'm at, and I'm happy where I'm at. But
isn't it interesting how difficult it is to put into words or like to take the technical stuff that you know how to do and how it works? Like I remember when we were starting out, and then we played around with some YouTube stuff, and it's so difficult. Like I know how to do this. I do it for a living. I do it every day. But then to try to explain it and put it into words and have it make sense and bring somebody along, it's tough. It's really, really difficult.
Yeah. It's tough. And I could do it socially. I could do it talking to you interactively, no problem. I can give a Cisco Live presentation and talk about SD access, right? I've done lots of those. Those are great.
But putting it in a form is a different thing.
Putting it in a form, especially in something where a certain amount of content or words are expected, right?
That's pressure too.
It is. And not every technology is conducive to a book. And I'll say that about SDA, right? It's matured and changed. The GUI has changed drastically since we did the book, and the book's only a year old. So, it's tough, and I was, like I said, I'm proud that I got my name on it, proud that I got it done. I'm glad I got it done. I don't regret it one single bit. But one of the draft blog posts on my blog is why I wrote a book and why I'll never do it again. So,
I want to read that post.
Spoiler alert! Just listen to this episode. And Are you a Patreon member, Andy? You should join the Patreon.
Nice. So Roddie, let's answer Andy's question now. What at a high level, what is SD access?
So I'm going to try not to be salesy on purpose, because again, I'm really not salesy. So SD software-defined access is, I modify my language, so we're supposed to say Cisco Software-Defined Access whenever we say it. We're not allowed to say SDA or just SDSS. So Cisco Software-Defined Access, Andrew, is is an overlay, is a fabric technology for the campus and branch. And what it allows, so if you're familiar with ACI, it's kind of like ACI, but for the fabric or for the campus and branch, where you have users and IoT devices versus servers and applications.
Can I ask you an embarrassing question?
Yeah.
We're in the trust tree, right?
It depends on who's editing this episode. Yeah, ask the question.
What the hell's the fabric?
Okay. Yeah, I don't like that word. I shouldn't have used it.
I don't either.
No.
People keep explaining it to me, and I think it's a bunch of damn switches tied together somehow, but I don't get it.
It's a I don't know. Who can explain it better than me? So,
well, the way I look at it is
fabric
it's a
guy.
bunch of virtual
We can
tunnels.
skip it
AJ,
and edit
get the
it out
book.
if you want, but I just,
Yeah.
I don't know. As soon as you said fabric, I'm like, I still don't know.
Yeah,
what
do you have
fabric
to use
is.
like which brand of fabric softener do you have to use, you know, to like make it act right and all that?
Yeah. So no,
Is it abstraction? Is that what the fabric is?
I would call it an abstraction. You're basically glomming a whole bunch of network devices together to perform one function, to look cohesive, so that you can plug anything into that glom of network devices and have it behave the same.
Instead of all these disparate pieces.
Yeah, instead of necessarily
this is
having
like a logic.
And it's logical,
pulls it all
right?
together.
Exactly,
Okay.
right. So they don't have to be directly connected together, right? Your fabric could ride over a whole bunch of infrastructure, but so technically, your MPLS network is a fabric, right? Your VPN from site A to site B is a fabric. FedRAMP is
It's
a
an
fabric,
overlay.
right?
Okay.
It's an overlay.
Would those
and-
be considered threads?
You're getting deep
I'm
there.
bad at this. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to pull you off and distract you.
So-
Okay, so I think I got fabric.
At my core, I'm a distribution guy. No, I'll leave it. That's how you do a pun, Dan.
Let me make notes of that.
Tim, man, you said it would get weird.
Yeah.
So software-defined access is an overlay technology. I prefer that word. Thanks, AJ. And so I'll get into the features in a minute, but what it allows you to do is basically set up this overlay between your floors, buildings, sites,
Departments?
within a camp. Departments.
Okay.
The departments are more of a logical, but yeah, absolutely. And wherever you plug in your laptop or your IoT device, I don't know a better way to say this. It doesn't matter which port. You can connect to any port on this fabric switch will
You have to be
behave
like on a specific port
right.
in a VLAN.
Right.
Like
You don't have to statically assign the VLAN or make sure that VLAN has access to this default gateway because this is where the router is or this layer 3, right? Everything's kind of overlaid on top. So it's software defined, and that's where we get into the DNA Center part in a minute. But it's an overlay technology using VXLAN and Lisp to accomplish this, right? So you have a bunch of layer 3 capable switches that are set up as a routed access, right? That's your underlay.
Okay.
And if you remember the way Cisco used to recommend to do networks probably 18 years ago is we wanted layer 3 on every switch. And every switch is the default gateway. So in an SD access fabric, that's how you configure your underlay. Because the underlay's role is to forward layer 3 packets as quickly as possible wherever they need to go.
Okay.
Those packets are the SDA overlay packets. Okay, so when you send a ping to Dan, regardless of where Dan's laptop is plugged in, that packet's going to get encapsulated by your access switch, and it will be sent directly to the loopback address of the switch that Dan is connected to. Right? So it's not going to go through the network natively. It's not going to have the same Dan's destination IP address all the way through the network. The destination IP address, as soon as that packet leaves your switch, is going to be the loopback address of the switch that Dan is connected to. And then
that through like a VXLAN tunnel?
It's a VXLAN tunnel. It is exactly VXLAN. So it uses Lisp as the control plane to find out where Dan lives, right? So it'll say, okay, this packet's going to FEAB colon A147 colon. Oh, wait a minute. We're not using that technology. So it's going to go to 10111 and it'll do a Lisp lookup say, hey, where's 10.1.1? The control plane will say it's on this switch. Here's the loopback address of this switch. The switch will then encapsulate it in VXLAN and send it directly to that switch. So the beauty is there can be anything in between those switches.
Okay.
It's layer 3 all the way through the network, so you can use ECMP to load balance between your links. So there's no spanning tree, right?
Oh,
So that's when I want to be the sales guy.
You should have started with that.
When I want to be the sales guy, I find the oldest person in the room and tell them that they're going to get rid of Andy. You're going to get rid of spanning tree. You're never going to have to worry about a spanning tree loop or root bridges or priorities or any of that stuff ever again, because
I love it.
Every switch is layer 3 connected to every other switch. Every link is a point-to-point /30 or /31, depending on how weird you are. And then I'm going to troll
it's a valid statement.
I'm going to troll the /31 people next. So
Hey, listen, it should be /31. It's a point-to-point. There's no reason to waste two.
Oh my gosh,
on
Andy.
that /30.
Here we go.
Look at him.
My
Serenity now.
My opinion of you just went a little bit lower.
Why do you need a broadcast address or a gateway on a point-to-point?
Because that's what the guy that invented IP said to do, Andy.
Yeah.
That's what
But he was wrong.
And you know what? And
why send a broadcast across a point-to-point?
when we standardize on IPv Andy, you can do whatever you want with whatever technology you want. But right now, IPv4...
I'm changing the phrase. It's now get off Andy's overlay.
Yeah.
Listen, if a /31 didn't work, he should have wrote the protocol so that a /31 wouldn't work.
All right. Well, we found out who the weirdo of our group is. So, anyways,
I thought
the point-to-point connections.
Honestly, like the Ant-Man thing was bad, but man, nothing matches me and the /31. So anyway, so talking about so you get rid of spanning tree. That's what I do. I find the oldest guy in the room named Andy, and I tell him, hey, you get to get rid of spanning tree because everything is layer 3. We're going to use ECMP to load balance across these layer 3 links. So we're going to use your links efficiently. You can even, if you're really weird, have non-Cisco devices in between. If your mandate, because you work at a federal agency, says you have to have other devices, and you want to put a Juniper router in between your two fabric switches, you can do that. As long as the Juniper router can route layer 3 packets between the two, it's good.
Did that hurt to say that?
It did.
It looked a little painful. I was just wondering.
I almost used the F word before I said
it. So it's not a magical feature in a Cisco image.
It's standards based. It's
okay.
Yeah,
it's
standards based.
IEEE, whatever.
It's based on.
So you just have to be able to route on your switch, and you're good.
Yeah, so the non-Cisco switch doesn't even know that it's SDA, right? It's just routing a layer 3 packet from point to point. He doesn't care. He's not part of that conversation. He doesn't know about VXLAN or Lisp.
So where's that magic happening?
On the edge,
two endpoints?
These two endpoint switches, right? The access switch.
They have to be Cisco, right?
Yes. The members of your fabric, you're going to have a border, which is how traffic gets in and out of the fabric, a control plane, which is like the DNS server for this stuff, and an edge switch, which is your access switch. So all of those functions have to be Cisco Catalyst 9300s, 9500s, 94, 93.
Does it have to be the 9000 series? Because I know, like in ACI, you have to have the Nexus 9, like the 9300 and whatnot. So
yeah, so Cisco for the Catalyst 9000 series, all of them, and the Catalyst 3850 and the Catalyst 3560 all support SDA. ISR 4Ks support the border function of SDA because you might want to have a router as a border instead of a switch. And then there are some other different models that are supported.
Well, now you've piqued my interest here. I'm curious, why the 3560?
Legacy. It was a layer. When we came out with this, the 9K hadn't come out yet. So SDA came out about 8 months before the 93, probably a year before the Cat 9K.
Okay.
So we had already designed it, but we came out with them kind of just after each other. So the 3850 and the 3650, as long as they're layer 3 capable and licensed, will support SDA.
Okay. Now, so let me ask this. Do you have to have a certain iOS for that?
I mean, it's going to be current. Anything now. So, I mean, SDA has been out for 5 years, almost 5 years.
So like on the ACI side, you have to have the NXOS ACI mode kind of thing. So you don't have to have a special...
No, it's iOS XE.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just
all right.
your plain iOS XE. So the other things that, before I forget, the other things that SDA gives you, so you get the Fabric, Andy, so that's the Fabric piece and being able to plug in. But it also has the VXLAN implementation we're using supports scalable group tags, or SGTs, or secure group tags, depending on what you want to call them, which allow you to mark your traffic based on the authentication and authorization process. So when you log in, your port is enabled for .1x, say. You're going to log in, username Andy, password IPv6 stinks. ICE is going to have a policy. I got to stop. ICE has a policy that says, okay, you're allowed in. I'm going to look at my AD and that password matches. And I'm going to put them on this VLAN. And I'm going to assign him this SGT because he's in group engineers. And then Dan logs in, the same process happened, but Dan might be in group accountants, right? So all of your traffic, Andy, as soon as it hits the network, is going to be marked in the engineering group. All of Dan's traffic is going to be marked in the accountants group, all the way through. That SGT will stay in the VXLAN header.
Is the SGT the policy? Is that what
it's just a tag?
It's the marker,
tag,
right?
Okay, that
and then
identifies. Okay.
And then you can write policies that say permit
based on the tag.
Yeah, permit engineering to accounting, deny engineering to accounting. They're written as standard or extended ACLs almost, right? They're not stateful. It's not a firewall, but you can have what they call micro-segmentation within a fabric very easily.
So am I writing these policies in DNA Center or in ICE?
Yeah, so that'll get me to the DNA Center topic. So DNA Center orchestrates the SDA configuration. So when you want to build your SDA network, you either discover or onboard your devices in DNA Center. So they can be pre-existing if you manually configured your underlay, or you can pull them out of the box and put them and do what we call LAN automation, which will build the underlay automatically for you based on whatever parameters you give it. So it'll go into a brand new factory out of the box switch, and with the switches come in plug and play mode now. They have for 6-7 years, right? It'll discover it. It'll push the appropriate underlay configuration to it. It'll give it a name, an IP address. It'll onboard it into DNA Center. And then in DNA Center, you pick your fabric rules. I want this switch to be an edge switch. I want this switch to be my border. I want this switch to be the control plane. I want these authentication policies, .1x, MAB, whatever. It will orchestrate all the configuration on the switch as well as some of the configuration in ICE. So you still have to build your authorization authentication policies in ICE, but your security policies, so the permitting accounting to engineering, you actually do in DNA Center, and DNA Center will push them to ICE. There's no magic. This is TrustSec, right? This is Cisco TrustSec. So all the policies live in ICE, and ICE is the one that pushes the policies down to the edge switches whenever you log in. But the orchestration and the configuration is done in DNA Center.
Gotcha.
I have a WAN question. So if you're doing VXLAN across the network, you're doing VXLAN across the WAN, you got to have jumbo frames enabled. Is that correct?
You should have jumbo frames enabled. So we tell you to have jumbo frames enabled. The
Okay,
reality
so how does that...
It's 150 bytes, I think you need. So you got to get up to 1650 somehow.
Okay, so how would that work with like SD-WAN if you're leveraging DIA that maybe the carrier doesn't support that? How do you make SDA function? Sorry, Cisco Software-Defined Access. How do you make that function? Does it fragment, or do you just say no? Sorry, it's not going to work.
No. So SDA Cisco Software-Defined Access is a campus branch technology. It's not a WAN technology. So we don't actually support stretching a fabric across a WAN.
Okay.
So you just treat it as separate sites? I'm just trying to see how sites tie together.
So what will happen is if the host at one site is on the SDA fabric and the host on the other site is not, all the VXLAN stuff gets stripped as soon as it leaves the border. So then you don't have your MTU issues. If you are running a technology called multi-site, which allows you to do end-to-end SDA or end-to-end segmentation. I think right now, I don't want to say this without knowing for sure. I think right now we still require 1600 MTU across the WAN if you want to do multi-site.
Okay.
But I'd have to confirm that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because you have to allow for the overhead. I mean, obviously the old solution for us old folks is to adjust the MTU on the end hosts or to use a TCP adjust MSS on the edge, which will work, but it won't work with UDP. So if you've got UDP traffic that's 1500 bytes, it's going to get dropped or fragmented, which is worse, right?
Gotcha.
Okay.
So AJ, I don't think we want to go too much further in SD access because I think we want to actually do an episode just on SD access, right?
Oh,
so,
yeah. We will.
Yeah, I'm getting fired up. So
yeah,
if we need to
these are
shut
good
it down,
questions.
we should
These are
shut
really
it
good
down.
questions. so
Yeah, I would love it. I'd love to come back, man. That'd be great.
So yeah, AJ.
So I just want to go like a little bit deeper into the DNA Center as being like the central hub of it, and then we can put a bow on it.
Sure. So DNA Center will orchestrate software-defined access. So the software-defined access, or SDA, is one of the applications in DNA Center. DNA Center also does software image management. So you can, I'm starting to sound like a salesperson now, but you can upgrade, define your golden image per site, per building, per floor, per platform, per model, and automatically upgrade those devices to that version of code. It'll download it from CCO automatically. You can schedule it to stage it ahead of time. You can schedule it to reboot it later. You can schedule it to happen right away. So software image management is another one.
Hold on.
Yes.
How do you deal with the licensing?
So
You hesitated, Roddie.
yeah.
I did because
it
stuff has changed. Yeah.
Well, right. It sounds magical.
It is magical.
You got to deal with, but then you got to deal with the licensing. You can't just push stuff without buying licenses.
It's magical. No, it'll. So we have. No, that's a good question. So we have changed things a little bit recently. However, we don't distribute images based on license features. We've had a one image philosophy now for a few years. So there is one 9348 TS-48 image out there for 1763. There's not one for services. There's not one for enterprise. We don't have different images for different licenses anymore. So the licensing is actually in the configuration.
Oh, okay.
Right? So you enable your license on your switch. You can have it talk to smart licensing to validate online, or you can download a pack and enable it locally. So image distribution, upgrading a router, the license doesn't matter. It's the configuration will hold the licensing information.
Okay.
Okay.
Sweet.
Uh-oh.
He hated that answer so much. He just he's
done. He's
going
his battery.
Andy rage quitted once again.
He's going to
plug his
upgrade his
battery in.
switches now because he knows he doesn't have to worry about licensing anymore. So he's going to do some upgrades. So SWIM is the name of that feature in DNA Center, software image management. It does templates, so you can, again, based on your configure, you can type in configuration templates in DNA Center and have it roll those templates out to different platforms, different buildings, different sites. You can standardize based on any of those parameters or criteria. It has Assurance, which is like a monitoring platform that will. It's the strengths right now are very wireless centric, so it can look at the onboarding process. It'll tell you all your SNRs and all your wireless stuff. I'm not a wireless person, so all these words don't mean anything to me, but I've seen them on screens, so I know they're legit. So it'll tell you what the SNR is and if there's any interference and rogue APs and all that kind of stuff. It'll allow you to place APs based on strength. It doesn't have all of the features that Cisco Prime has. So I know Cisco Prime is the big thing right now with wireless, with Cisco Wireless, but most of those features are being copied into Cisco DNA Center. So it lets you see usage on your devices, usage on your links. We have application assurance, which will actually get down to, okay, Office 365 is having issues in this building. This router is part of that conversation. This is how many users are affected because we're getting all the user information from ICE, right? This is how many users are affected. Here's this device that's unhealthy. This is probably the cause of the problem. So that's kind of things that assurance will do. It's based on it takes information from SNMP, syslog, NetFlow, streaming telemetry, and correlates it all together and matches it against a known set of issues that is in the database. That database comes from 30 odd years of attack cases. Wow. Right. So they basically said, what are the most common issues our customers have run into over the last 30 odd years? Let's put those into assurance and let's teach DNA Center or assurance how to recognize those issues based on this specific message in syslog, or this message in a trap, or this message in NetFlow, or this kind of pattern in NetFlow. So it will do that. It'll tell you what the issue is. It'll give you a list of suggested actions. If the suggested action is something you can do on a switch that's in DNA Center or a router, you can click Perform Action Now, and it'll actually go do that action. It'll say, open attack case and send them a show IP OSPF neighbor. Click here to get that command. So you click the button, it pops up the show IP OSPF neighbor. Okay.
I love
it. I know I sound like a sales guy now because
no, you don't. This is magical.
No, you really don't.
Wonderful.
Well, some of that stuff is good, and some of that stuff works most of the time. It's not magical yet, but I think it will get there. I like the direction they're going with it. I really do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be as passionate about it when I talk about it.
Does it make anybody else like weirded out that we spent all this time learning CLI and now everything's getting pushed to like GUI and just it's weird, right?
It took me old school. It took me 6 months to be on board with this because I went through the experience of ACI, like Dan mentioned, where you have to run a different code base or a different image or different mode on the switch where you didn't have access to the CLI, and that really pissed me off. I was so furious. And then so I get into SDA and we're doing the same thing. It's like, no, stay away from the CLI because if you type a command, there's a chance the DNA Center is going to reverse it. So honestly, Andy, it took me 6 months.
It's an adjustment, right?
It really did. I really had to let a lot of things go, and I run into this when talking to people about this all the time. It's usually the oldest person in the room that's like, "Oh, I'm not going to give up my enable password," but
that's
true,
and that's not where I'm going with it because it seems like the benefits and the magic of it's totally worth it. If I'd be fine never touching a CLI again if I could get all the benefits that you're spelling out.
Yeah, I think the caveat I give is. That assumes that we Cisco got everything right.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
Right. Which, if you've been doing this a long time, you know that there are always going to be bugs. So now, are things getting better? Do I trust automation more? Absolutely. I started doing SDA stuff about 4.5, 5 years ago, and there were a lot of times where I needed to get into the CLI to verify things. I never jump onto the CLI right now, other than to reset a router.
So that's what's scary is you're handing over the keys of the kingdom to this.
Yeah, you trust
this tool ecosystem and okay, here you go. Don't destroy me.
But companies have. ACI works. ACI did a good job with that stuff. Meraki, right? You've never seen a Meraki CLI. It doesn't exist. So it can be done. I think I'm not going to criticize Cisco at this point, but what we're kind of trying to do this on a platform that has a history of the CLI. First, now iOS XE, but previous to that, it was iOS. And we got folks that have been in this industry for a long time that have always done it this way. And we're still calling it Catalyst, right? If you had said Catalyst OS when I was getting my CCIE, it was Cat OS. It was the set commands. Like, this stuff has been around for a long time, and people are used to using it, and it's ingrained in them. First thing they want to do is know your enable password so they can go in and configure things and troubleshoot things, right? So, yeah, if we can get it right, it's great. And I think, honestly, it is better now. It is a lot better now. It took me about 6 months to stop hesitating with the automation stuff. So.
Wow.
Sounds amazing. Also sounds expensive.
Well, that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
There we go.
There are a lot of other things that DNA Center does. So if we do another one of these and I can screen share, I can demo DNA Center.
Yeah.
I can go through the GUI.
Yeah,
and
100%
Sounds
to do
amazing.
that.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I would love to do that, man. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll
That
cut
sounds
down on the
great.
puns and the jokes.
Don't do that.
Keep those coming.
Please don't.
Keep those coming.
So,
This has been great.
oh, I fly airplanes. I am a pilot.
Oh, yeah.
Today.
Oh, yes.
We forgot about that.
I did forget
In
about
your
that.
copious free time when you're not getting every certification there is.
I haven't flown in like 8 years, but I did get it just to get it. That was a bucket list thing. The Cisco Press thing and the getting my pilot's license thing were two bucket list things.
Nice.
Good for you.
I do want to bring one thing back up from towards the beginning of the show, because I think we cut you off. You were telling a story about your CCIE lab, and you got through the first day. You woke yourself up in the middle of the night because you forgot to send community, or you thought you did. What did the second day, the morning you walked in, what happened?
So second day, so you really have no idea how you did, right?
Right.
You get in there because it was a 9-hour day. You're exhausted from traveling in a couple of days before, so you're already tired. You go in, you do that full day, you're overwhelmed. Even though you've done practice labs and scenarios, you really have no idea how you did. So I go to the hotel, wake up 3 a.m. and say, oh shit, I forgot to send communities. Walk in, I see the booklet on my desk, and it's like, I relaxed. I bought myself another 3 hours of this. So the first half of the second day is all of the non-IP stuff that I talked about. So NetBUI, IPX, AppleTalk, DLSW, SNA, all that kind of stuff. So you get, again, so there's a new booklet now with new exercises and new scenarios that you have to do, that you have to configure. And that takes you to lunchtime. So same process. You go for lunch, and when you come back, if there's a booklet on your desk, you sit down and you complete the lab. If there isn't, you've failed. You got to sit and wait for the proctor. So I go to lunch, I come back, there's a booklet on my desk. So now is the troubleshooting piece. And I don't know how it's done now, because I know that the lab is just a one-day lab now. But back then, I mentioned earlier, we had the physical equipment was all there. And they wouldn't just mess with your configurations. They would mess with your cables. They would take a T1 cable and they would jam it in upside down. Well, if you've ever used a T1 cable, it doesn't go in upside down. It's not made to go in upside down. So the pins would bend. So you'd have to look and identify that the pins are bent, chuck the cable and grab another cable. And so this was the troubleshooting section. So I got there, got the troubleshooting section. That was the part I was looking forward to the most. Once I got to that part, I was like, I love troubleshooting, because I had all my config memorized. So first thing I did was do a show run, and I didn't type that. Got rid of that command. Oh, that's different than I got rid of that command. Oh,
there goes that photographic memory.
There was a different line between these two commands. I got to add that command back in. So that part was easy. Got the physical stuff. Got my connectivity up and running, and I passed. And the only thing I got wrong in that 2 days was that stupid send communities.
and you woke up, you said like 3 a.m. and
I
realized
knew
that.
I got it wrong.
Yeah.
I knew I got it wrong. Yeah. It was, I've been lucky. I was prepared. I really did burn up all of my vacation time to do the exam.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that's not easy to do when you've got she was 4 at the time. I had a 4-year-old daughter. So I would spend the day with her, and then I would be up all night. Literally, as soon as she went to bed, I would be up all night in my lab. And I had a stack of 6 2500 routers, a bunch of back-to-back T1 cables, and I had an ISDN emulator, and I had a terminal server that I would hop to, and a CatOS switch. And I would just go through scenario after scenario. And back then you had to buy these scenarios online, and then they'd send them to you in big stacks of paper. I had reams of paper with these scenarios. So I basically went through every scenario every night, all night, until I had them all memorized. But I was still trying to, this is the comment I made earlier about verifying things. Even though I had to memorize and exactly what to do for every single one of them, I got more practice doing the show commands and the verification commands to know what to look for, to know that it worked. Because I would still make a typo, right? Yeah, but at that point, I knew if I made a typo, I knew exactly what it was. Like, it's just because I looked at that output so many times, and it was repetitive. So the repetition helped me a lot. And
you were labbing instead of sleeping? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I would maybe sleep. I'd drop her off at school in the morning at like 8 o'clock, 8:30. I'd sleep for like 3 hours, and then I'd get up and start working again. And then I'd start doing other stuff. Yeah.
So like 3 hours a day sleep you were doing for 6 months?
That was the vacation time that was like 5 weeks of vacation where I was really hardcore. But the 6 months previous was still, I was still doing a minimum of 6-7 hours a night. So I was working, and then I'd come home and I'd spend some time with my kid.
And it didn't mess with your retention or your mental health or anything, just
No,
exhausting yourself?
I was
Okay.
30. I had plenty of energy.
Yeah.
I just,
Andy just turned 30 last week.
No,
I'm
31.
asking questions like that.
I don't have that.
There's no way I could do it. Yeah, I mean, I think that was tough. It was tough. I don't know. I honestly don't know how I did it. I really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't say it was easy. It was tough. I don't know that I could do it now. But part of it was I really loved the technology. Like it's like today, I'll go mess with. I don't do any Docker as part of my day job, but I'm trashing containers all day long because it's just stuff I like doing. It's interesting. So that stuff, networking has always been interesting to me. So it was fun for me to do that. It didn't feel like work, or it was a challenge for sure because I was learning a lot about the protocols. But it was just fun.
Love what you do.
Yeah, always.
Excellent. Well, he is Roddie. He has never failed a Cisco exam. He is CCIE 7472. He is a Cisco Press author. The book is Cisco Software-Defined Access. We will drop a link to our show notes, and you can pick it up there and wherever books are sold, I'm sure. Roddie, where can people find you? Twitter? Blog? What you got?
Today, I'm going to lock my Twitter after this episode. I'm just thinking, AJ, I may have failed one of the research about 6 years ago, but that's a different story for another time. But now you said that, I was like, God, that helps.
Andy.
That is exactly what the listeners needed to hear. That you got to fail. That's great.
Yes. Don't do anything that I've done in the last 30 years. Don't have the attitude that I've had in the last 30 years. No, I think I have had. So the question was, where can you find me? You can find me on Twitter, usually trolling people. My handle it doesn't have a pronunciation. I don't know. There's 4 y'all on here. You guys know my handle. Do you know what it means?
No idea.
The squirrely.
No.
Arabic
that's
stuff,
Arabic.
that
That's my name in Arabic. But what is my handle?
Oh, okay.
What is my my Twitter ID?
eiddoR.
Yeah. Do you know what it is?
Nope.
I do not.
Come on. All right. So it's literally my first name backwards.
Oh.
Look at that. And it's right there.
It's
right in front of my face. And I didn't get that.
So
we automatically go to acronyms. That's just what we do.
Yeah. The squiggly stuff that you pointed out, Andy, is my name in Arabic. So
very cool.
The squiggly stuff.
That's what he called it.
I'm sorry.
I didn't want to be Andy insensitive, so I just used the language that he used to be. So,
oh gosh.
I'm on Twitter. My handle is eiddoR, which is my first name backwards, which now everybody knows the secret.
Yes.
And that's where I hang out most of the time. I do have a YouTube channel. Actually, I've got some SDA and DNA Center videos up on that YouTube channel if you want to Google me, but you can.
What's your YouTube channel?
I have
just Roddie.
I don't know.
Hasan YouTube.
Yeah. I think
we'll find it and put it in the link.
Yeah,
in the notes.
I don't know. I'm not good at self-promotion. I'm really not good at self-promotion.
We're trying to do it for you.
I believe there's a blog in there too, right?
Oh, there's a blog, CCIE.tv.
Okay.
So the blog is mostly technical, not Cisco-centric per se, but there's also some cooking stuff on there because I also love to cook. It's my therapy.
You're in Texas.
Have
you been to Franklin Barbecue?
I have been to Franklin Barbecue, yes.
How is it?
If you like barbecue, it's good.
I love barbecue. I'm reading his book. He's my hero. When I come to Texas,
definitely
can we please go to Franklin Barbecue?
We can. It's in Austin. It's about 4.5 hours away from me, but you let me know and we'll get down there. Yeah.
It's like an hour and a half wait in line, right, to get this guy's food.
Yeah. No, it's good. It is. If you like barbecue, I'm not huge on barbecue, but if you like barbecue, it is good barbecue for sure.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, Roddie. Thank you so much for joining us. Any last minute words?
No, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. Wasn't as weird as Tim made it out to be.
I knew he was going to like Nat Man.
Yeah, I did. Nat Man. Honestly, again, if I would have thought there's no way he came up with that just based on my tweet. So I feel better that you already had that plan.
Yeah.
No, it was a good time, guys. I'm glad we finally got to do this, AJ. I give you shit about forgetting about me, but
much deserved shit.
feel lucky to be here, and hopefully come back and do a demo for y'all.
Yeah,
sometime,
yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Anytime, guys. Anytime.
Excellent.
Thank you so
well,
much.
Join us again next week for another episode. Thanks again, Roddie, and have a good night. Hey everyone, this is AJ. If you like what you heard today, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcatcher. Smash that bell icon to get notified of all of our future episodes. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Art of NetEng. That's Art of NetEng. You can also find us on the web at artofnetworkengineering.com, where we post all of our show notes. You can read blog articles from the co-hosts and guests, and also a lot more news and info from the networking world. Thanks for listening.